Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the shadowy world of Victorian London, where gas lamps flicker against fog-shrouded windows and thousands of restless souls pace their bedrooms, counting sheep that never seem to work. You can almost hear the clip-clop of horse hooves on cobblestones, the distant whistle of steam engines, and beneath it all, the collective sighing of an entire generation that simply cannot fall asleep. The story may solve mysteries you never had an explanation for, about why we still struggle with sleep today. So before you explore the story with me, please take a moment to help me subscribe to the channel, like and share this video, or maybe leave a comment below. But make sure you do it when you really like what I bring to you. I'd love to hear where and when you started watching this video, or perhaps you could share a compliment about your favourite sleepy history topic. Now let's keep the lights as soft as possible. Turn on the fan for a gentle sound to help the story feel more emotional, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You find yourself walking down a narrow Victorian street at 2 a.m, your footsteps echoing against the damp brick walls. Through countless windows you glimpse the warm glow of oil lamps and candles, not because people are reading or working, but because they simply cannot sleep. This is 1870s London, and you're witnessing the beginning of what historians would later call the Great Insomnia Epidemic. The air tastes of coal smoke and dampness as you pause beneath a flickering gas lamp. From the house beside you comes the soft murmur of voices. A mother reading aloud to her restless children, her voice weary from nights of broken sleep. Across the street, a gentleman in his nightgown paces before his window, hands clasped behind his back, his silhouette a testament to another sleepless night in an increasingly sleepless city. You're standing at the epicenter of a phenomenon that would spawn an entire industry of bizarre sleep cures, each stranger than the last. In your modern world, you might reach for melatonin or count on your smartphone's sleep tracking app, but these Victorian insomniacs had no such luxuries. Instead, they turned to remedies that range from mildly peculiar to downright dangerous, creating a marketplace where desperation met entrepreneurial creativity in the most unexpected ways. The woman next door finally closes her book with a soft thud. Through her window, you watch as she prepares what appears to be a steaming cup of something that definitely isn't tea. Steam rises from the liquid, carrying an aroma that makes your nose wrinkle. It's her nightly concoction of heated milk mixed with a few drops of laudanum, a opium-based tincture that every respectable household kept in their medicine cabinet. She doesn't know it yet, but she's participating in what will become one of the most widespread and problematic sleep remedies of her era. As you continue down the street, you notice how many windows remain illuminated despite the late hour. Behind each glowing pane lies a story of Victorian insomnia, the factory worker whose body refuses to adjust to 12-hour shifts, the society lady whose corset-compressed organs rebel against horizontal rest, the businessman whose mind races with calculations and concerns that seem to multiply in the darkness. The irony isn't lost on you that this is the same era that gave birth to the phrase sleeping like a baby. Yet everywhere you look, adults are struggling with rest that should come naturally. A constable walks his beat, nodding knowingly at the illuminated windows. He's seen this pattern night after night, understanding that insomnia has become as common as the fog that rolls in from the Thames. You pause at a corner where a hand-painted sign advertises Dr. Morrison's guaranteed sleep tonic, relief in every bottle. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, this very corner will bustle with desperate customers seeking that promised relief, willing to try anything that might grant them the precious gift of uninterrupted slumber. The gas lamp above sputters and dims, casting dancing shadows that seem to mirror the restless movements happening behind all those wakeful windows. You're about to embark on a journey through the strangest chapter in sleep medicine history, where Victorian ingenuity, desperation, and a healthy dose of quackery combined to create remedies that would make your modern doctor either laugh or cringe. As the church bells chime 3 o'clock, you realise that your exploration of Victorian insomnia cures is just beginning. and the solutions people tried were far more creative, dangerous, and bizarre than you could ever imagine. You step into the bustling heart of industrial London, where the very forces that promise progress and prosperity have conspired to rob an entire generation of peaceful sleep. The year is 1875, and you're witnessing the birth of what medical professionals are beginning to call the modern sleep crisis, though they have no idea just how modern their problems will prove to be. The morning air vibrates with the thunderous rhythm of steam hammers from nearby factories, a sound that doesn't cease until well past midnight. You follow a group of bleary-eyed workers as they trudge toward the textile mills, their faces bearing the telltale signs of chronic sleep deprivation. These aren't isolated cases of individual insomnia. Entire neighbourhoods are caught in the grip of collective sleeplessness, and the reasons are multiplying faster than anyone can count them. Gaslighting, that marvel of Victorian engineering, burns bright through the night across the city. You pause beneath one of these hissing fixtures and realise something that the Victorians are only beginning to understand. Artificial light is tricking their bodies into believing night is day. For thousands of years, humans rose and slept with natural light cycles, but now you're watching the first generation in history to experience widespread light pollution. The soft, warm glow that seemed so civilized is actually disrupting circadian rhythms that evolved over millennia. A horse-drawn omnibus rattles past, its iron wheels striking cobblestones with a harsh percussion that echoes off brick buildings. Urban noise has reached unprecedented levels, and you notice how people flinch slightly at each sharp sound, their nerves already frayed from insufficient rest. The city never truly sleeps anymore, and neither, it seems, do its inhabitants. You follow the scent of coal smoke to a residential area where families crowd into cramped tenements. Through thin walls, you can hear crying babies, coughing fits, and the restless movements of people trying to find comfort on straw mattresses. Overcrowding has created a symphony of human sounds that makes peaceful sleep nearly impossible. A mother rocks her infant while trying to quiet two older children who share a single bed. Sleep has become a luxury that poverty cannot afford. The social changes are just as disruptive as the physical ones. You observe a middle-class businessman hurrying past, his mind clearly racing with concerns that would have been unthinkable to his grandfather. The pace of commerce has accelerated dramatically. Telegraphs demand instant responses, railroad schedules must be precisely maintained, and financial markets fluctuate with breathtaking speed. Modern life, it seems, has no patience for the natural rhythms of rest and wakefulness. Women face their own unique challenges in this changing world. You watch a lady navigate the street in a corset so tightly laced that deep breathing appears difficult even while standing. Historians still argue whether Victorian fashion or Victorian medicine contributed more to women's sleep disorders, but the evidence suggests both played significant roles. The ideal feminine figure requires compression that makes lying down uncomfortable. While medical theories about female hysteria often blame sleeplessness on everything from reading novels to expressing opinions, factory schedules have created an entirely new category of sleep disruption. You observe workers streaming from a mill during what should be evening hours, their shifts extending well into natural sleep time. The concept of working around the clock has literal meaning now, as industrial production demands human labour during hours when bodies naturally seek rest. Some factories operate continuously, creating a workforce that must fight their biological programming to remain productive. Coffee houses have multiplied throughout the city, and you notice how many customers appear to be medicating their exhaustion with increasing doses of caffeine. What began as a pleasant social beverage has evolved into a necessity for maintaining consciousness during daylight hours. The cycle becomes self-perpetuating. Caffeine provides temporary alertness, but makes nighttime sleep even more elusive. Medical professionals are beginning to document what they observe, though their understanding remains limited. You overhear a physician discussing cases with a colleague. The nervous system appears to be overstimulated by modern conditions, he says, not realizing how prescient his observation will prove. They're witnessing the early stages of what you might recognize as anxiety disorders, but Victorian medicine lacks the vocabulary to properly describe what's happening. The railway system deserves special mention in this catalogue of sleep disruption. You stand on a platform as the evening train arrives with a tremendous hiss of steam and screech of metal. Passengers emerge looking haggard, not just from travel, but from the chronic sleep disruption that comes with living near railway lines. The Industrial Revolution has literally shaken people awake, and the vibrations from passing trains can be felt through the ground for miles. Religious and social pressures add another layer of complexity. You notice how many people carry themselves with a particular kind of tension, the posture of individuals trying to maintain moral and social standards while battling physical exhaustion. Victorian society demands perfect composure and productivity, leaving no room for the natural variation in sleep patterns that previous generations accepted as normal. As evening approaches, you realize you're observing the perfect storm that created Victorian insomnia. Artificial light confusing natural rhythms, industrial noise preventing deep rest, social stress accelerating mental activity, physical discomfort from fashion and crowding, and stimulants masking but not solving the underlying problem. The stage is set for the desperate search for solutions that will define the next several decades of sleep medicine. You find yourself in the bustling marketplace of Victorian entrepreneurship, where the scent of desperation mingles with the aroma of mysterious herbal concoctions. The morning fog lifts to reveal a world transformed by commerce. Every street corner seems to sprout another vendor promising the miracle cure that will finally grant peaceful slumber to the sleep-deprived masses. A colourfully painted wagon rolls to a stop near the town square, its sides adorned with testimonials written in flowing script. Mrs. Henderson of Yorkshire slept like an angel after just one bottle. The proprietor, a gentleman with an impressive moustache, an even more impressive sales pitch, begins setting up his display. You watch as bottles of various shapes and sizes emerge from velvet-lined cases, each label more fantastical than the last. "Step right up," he calls, his voice carrying the practiced confidence of someone who has delivered this speech countless times. Professor Nightingale's ethereal sleep elixir, compounded from rare herbs gathered under the full moon. You notice how quickly a crowd gathers, faces drawn with fatigue, eyes bright with hope. These aren't gullible fools. They're intelligent people pushed to desperation by weeks or months of inadequate rest. The bottles themselves tell fascinating stories. You examine one labelled Morpheus's Blessing, an amber liquid that promises to gently coax the most stubborn mind into peaceful repose. The ingredient list, printed in tiny script, includes laudanum, alcohol, and what appears to be ground pearls. Another concoction, the Sandman's Kiss, boasts extracts of poppy, hops, and something mysteriously called essence of twilight. Patent medicine has become a legitimate industry, complete with manufacturing facilities and distribution networks that would impress modern pharmaceutical companies. You follow a delivery wagon to a warehouse where workers bottle thousands of doses daily. The operation is surprisingly sophisticated. Quality control measures ensure consistent colour and consistency, even if the actual medicinal value remains questionable. The marketing materials reveal the psychology of Victorian insomnia perfectly. You pick up a pamphlet advertising Dr. Slumberland's guaranteed rest tonic and notice how it addresses specific fears. For the businessman whose racing mind won't quiet, for the mother whose children's needs disturb her natural rhythms, for the scholar whose books keep him wakeful past midnight. Each demographic receives its targeted solution, though the actual contents vary little from bottle to bottle. Testimonials provide the social proof that Victorian consumers crave. You read letter after letter describing miraculous transformations, factory workers who finally found rest despite the noise, society ladies who overcame their nervous disorders, elderly gentlemen who rediscovered the sleep of their youth. Whether these testimonials are genuine or manufactured matters little. They create the narrative that desperate insomniacs want to believe. The pricing strategies reveal sophisticated market segmentation. Common folks' sleep remedy sells for a few pence, while Lord Dreamwell's noble slumber solution commands prices that would feed a working family for a week. The ingredients might be identical, but the packaging and marketing justify dramatic price differences. Victorian class consciousness extends even to sleep aids. You observe the sales process with fascination. The vendor doesn't just sell bottles, he sells hope, confidence, and the promise of transformation. Watch how he personalizes his pitch for each customer, identifying their specific sleep complaint, nodding sympathetically at their suffering, then presenting his product as the precise solution they've been seeking. It's psychology and showmanship combined with just enough medical terminology to sound credible. Historians still argue whether these patent medicine sellers were cynical fraudsters or genuine believers in their products, but the evidence suggests a complex mixture of both. Many vendors seem sincerely convinced that their particular combination of herbs and chemicals offers real benefits. They've witnessed enough placebo effects and coincidental improvements to maintain their faith in the enterprise. The competition between vendors creates an arms race of increasingly exotic ingredients. You overhear conversations about importing rare botanicals from distant colonies, incorporating newly discovered chemical compounds, and consulting with mysterious European specialists who claim ancient knowledge of sleep induction. Each seller must differentiate his product in an increasingly crowded marketplace. Women represent a particularly lucrative market segment. You watch a female vendor targeting other women with products specifically formulated for feminine nervous disorders and maternal exhaustion. Her pitch acknowledges the unique challenges that Victorian women face: corsets that restrict breathing, social expectations that demand constant composure, and domestic responsibilities that allow little time for rest. The seasonal nature of insomnia complaints creates interesting business opportunities. Spring brings tonics designed to combat the restlessness of renewal, while autumn products promise to prepare the body for healthful winter slumber. Even the phases of the moon influence marketing messages, with special formulations for the supposedly disruptive effects of full moon periods. You notice how these entrepreneurs have created an entire vocabulary around sleep problems. Terms like nervous exhaustion, brain fog, and vital depletion become common currency, giving customers language to describe experiences that mainstream medicine hasn't yet learned to address. In many ways, patent medicine vendors serve as informal diagnosticians for a population that mainstream doctors often dismiss. The success of this industry reflects a genuine market need that conventional medicine isn't meeting. You realize that while many of these products may have little therapeutic value, they're filling a crucial gap in healthcare, providing hope, attention, and the sense that someone understands the very real problem of chronic sleeplessness. As the day's sales conclude and vendors pack their remaining inventory, you observe the complex legacy they're creating. A tradition of seeking chemical solutions to sleep problems that will persist long after their specific concoctions are forgotten. You step into the dimly lit interior of a Victorian pharmacy, where ornate glass bottles line mahogany shelves like jewels in a treasure chest. The air carries the sweet, cloying scent of opium mixed with alcohol, the unmistakable aroma of laudanum, which sits as casually on these shelves as aspirin might in your modern medicine cabinet. Behind the polished counter, a pharmacist in a starched white coat measures careful drops into a small brown bottle, his movements precise and practiced. "Just a few drops in warm milk before bedtime," he advises the well-dressed lady waiting at the counter. "It will quiet your nerves and grant you the peaceful rest you seek." You watch as money changes hands for what amounts to liquid opium, a transaction so routine that neither participant seems to grasp the magnitude of what they are exchanging. This is 1878, and you're witnessing the height of what historians now call the opiate sleep remedy epidemic. The popularity of opium-based sleep aids reflects both medical ignorance and desperate necessity. You follow another customer as she leaves the pharmacy, her precious bottle carefully tucked into her reticule. She's a respectable middle-class housewife who would be horrified at the suggestion that she's using illegal drugs, yet the laudanum in her possession contains more opium than many modern street drugs. The Victorian mind draws careful distinctions between medicine and addiction that seem almost quaint from your perspective. Laudanum represents the aristocrat of sleep remedies. You examine a beautifully etched bottle that once belonged to a prominent physician. The liquid inside appears almost black, its potency concentrated enough to provide relief with just a few drops. The formula typically combines opium with alcohol, creating a double sedative effect that virtually guarantees unconsciousness. For chronic insomniacs, it offers something that no other remedy of the era can match: reliable, predictable sleep induction. The medical establishment's endorsement of opiate sleep aids carries tremendous weight with Victorian consumers. You observe a doctor making his rounds, his medical bag containing multiple bottles of morphine solutions alongside more conventional treatments. Physicians regularly prescribe opiates for everything from teething babies to elderly insomniacs, seeing them as wonder drugs that can solve problems other medications cannot touch. Patent medicine manufacturers have seized upon the effectiveness of opiates to create increasingly potent sleep remedies. You examine bottles of Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup and Dr. McMahon's elixir of opium, products marketed directly to consumers without medical supervision. The advertising promises gentle natural sleep, carefully avoiding any mention of the addictive properties that modern medicine understands all too well. Women find themselves particularly vulnerable to opiate dependency through sleep medications. You witness the daily routine of a society lady who began taking laudanum for occasional sleeplessness, but now requires increasingly larger doses just to function normally. Her physician, following conventional medical wisdom of the era, continues prescribing higher concentrations, interpreting her tolerance as evidence that her condition is worsening rather than recognizing the signs of physical dependence. The social acceptability of opiate use creates a peculiar blind spot in Victorian moral consciousness. You observe a temperance meeting where speakers condemn the evils of alcohol, while several attendees discreetly sip from small bottles of laudanum. The distinction seems arbitrary from your modern perspective, but Victorian society somehow manages to condemn recreational intoxication while embracing medicinal sedation. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors genuinely believed opiates were safe for regular use, or whether they simply lacked better alternatives for treating chronic insomnia. The medical literature of the period reveals a troubling pattern: initial enthusiasm for opiate sleep remedies, followed by growing concern about patient dependency, but no clear alternative treatments to offer suffering insomniacs. The economics of opiate sleep aids create perverse incentives throughout the medical system. You notice how pharmacists stock multiple varieties of opium-based products, each promising slightly different effects or targeting specific demographics. The profit margins on these medications far exceed those of conventional remedies, creating financial pressure to recommend them even for relatively minor sleep disturbances. Children represent a particularly tragic chapter in this story. You observe a mother administering soothing syrup to her fussing infant, unaware that she's essentially drugging her child into unconsciousness. Pediatric opiate use reaches shocking levels during this period, as parents desperate for sleep use the most effective sedatives available to quiet restless children. The withdrawal effects of opiate sleep aids often masquerade as worsening insomnia, creating a vicious cycle that traps users in escalating dependency. You witness a businessman who originally sought treatment for mild sleeplessness, but now experiences severe anxiety and agitation whenever he attempts to reduce his morphine consumption. His doctor, lacking understanding of withdrawal symptoms, interprets these effects as evidence that higher doses are medically necessary. Military veterans introduce another dimension to opiate sleep aid use. Soldiers returning from colonial conflict often arrive with both physical injuries and what you might recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. Opium provides relief from both pain and nightmares, making it seem like an ideal solution for veterans struggling to readjust to civilian sleep patterns. The medical establishment eagerly prescribes these medications without understanding their long-term consequences. The international opium trade helps explain why these powerful drugs are so readily available in Victorian Britain. You realise that the same commercial networks that bring tea from India and silk from China also deliver massive quantities of raw opium to British pharmaceutical manufacturers. The economic and political interests that support this trade make it unlikely that anyone in authority will question the wisdom of widespread opiate prescribing. Quality control represents a significant problem in this unregulated market. You examine bottles from different manufacturers and notice dramatic variations in potency and purity. Some preparations contain barely enough opium to have any effect, while others are concentrated enough to cause accidental overdoses. Consumers have no way to judge what they are actually purchasing. As you observe the daily patterns of opiate-dependent Victorians, you begin to understand how a generation that sought simple sleep solutions instead created the foundation for modern drug addiction problems. You enter a peculiar workshop where the air crackles with static electricity and mysterious humming sounds emanate from brass contraptions that look like they belong in a mad scientist's laboratory. The inventor, a gentleman with wild hair and ink-stained fingers, gestures proudly towards his latest creation. A bed surrounded by magnets, copper coils, and what appears to be a small steam engine. Welcome to the world of Victorian magnetic sleep therapy, where the mysteries of electromagnetism meet the desperation of chronic insomnia. Behold, the inventor declares, his eyes gleaming with evangelical fervour, the magnetic sleep induction chamber, harnessing the very forces that govern the cosmos to restore natural slumber. You watch as he demonstrates the device on a willing volunteer, who lies nervously on a bed while magnets spin overhead and electrical currents pulse through copper wires embedded in the mattress. The theory, he explains with scientific confidence, is that human sleep patterns are governed by magnetic fields, and artificial magnetism can realign disrupted biological rhythms. The magnetic sleep movement draws inspiration from recent discoveries in electromagnetism that have captivated the Victorian imagination. You observe other inventors presenting their own variations: magnetic pillows filled with iron filings, electromagnetic headbands that supposedly synchronize brainwaves, an elaborate apparatus that generates what inventors call therapeutic magnetic storms around the sleeping subject. Each device promises to tap into fundamental forces of nature that conventional medicine supposedly ignores. Franz Anton Mesmer's earlier work with animal magnetism provides historical precedent for these mechanical approaches to sleep induction. You examine pamphlets describing how magnetic fields can influence the invisible fluids that Victorian science believes flow through human bodies. While Mesmer's original theories about hypnotic trances have evolved, inventors have adapted his magnetic concepts specifically for sleep disorders, creating devices that claim to manipulate these mysterious bodily forces. The variety of magnetic sleep devices reflects impressive Victorian mechanical ingenuity. You encounter the rotary magnetic sleep inducer, a contraption resembling a mechanical planetarium that slowly rotates magnets around the sleeper's head in patterns supposedly mimicking celestial movements. Another device, the electromagnetic pulse chamber, delivers precisely timed magnetic impulses designed to gradually slow brain activity from waking consciousness into natural sleep rhythms. Electrical components add another layer of complexity to these therapeutic machines. You observe the galvanic sleep stimulator, which delivers mild electrical currents to specific points on the body while the subject attempts to fall asleep. The inventor explains that electricity can rebalance the nervous humours and discharge accumulated mental tension, concepts that sound scientific enough to convince desperate insomniacs to try almost anything. The testimonials surrounding magnetic sleep therapy reveal the powerful placebo effects that these elaborate devices can generate. You read accounts of chronic insomniacs who experienced immediate improvement after using magnetic beds, electromagnetic helmets, or vibrating magnetic chambers. Whether the devices actually work matters less than the psychological impact of undergoing such an impressive and scientific-seeming treatment procedure. Historians still argue whether magnetic sleep therapy represents genuine scientific inquiry or elaborate quackery, but the evidence suggests that many inventors sincerely believed in their theories. The devices require significant investment in materials and manufacturing, suggesting that creators expected real medical results rather than simply exploiting gullible customers. Victorian scientific understanding of magnetism and electricity remains primitive enough that these theories seem plausible to educated people. The social ritual surrounding magnetic sleep treatment adds therapeutic value beyond any physical effects the devices might produce. You witness a typical session. The patient arrives at a specially designed clinic, receives a thorough consultation about their sleep patterns, and undergoes what amounts to a technological ceremony involving impressive machinery and scientific-sounding procedures. The attention and care embedded in this process provides psychological benefits that home remedies cannot match. Women represent a particularly important market for magnetic sleep devices. You observe female patients who find these technological treatments more socially acceptable than pharmaceutical approaches that might carry moral implications. Magnetic therapy offers a natural solution that aligns with Victorian beliefs about feminine sensitivity to environmental influences. Many devices are specifically marketed to address feminine nervous disorders and maternal sleep disruptions. The mechanical complexity of some magnetic sleep devices reaches almost comical extremes. You encounter the celestial magnetism replicator, a room-sized machine that attempts to recreate the magnetic effects of planetary alignments through an elaborate system of rotating magnetic spheres. The inventor claims that disrupted sleep patterns result from being disconnected from cosmic magnetic influences that primitive humans naturally experienced. Combination devices represent the logical extreme of Victorian magnetic sleep therapy. You examine machines that incorporate magnets, electricity, mechanical vibration, musical tones, and aromatic vapours, all working in supposedly synchronized harmony to induce sleep. These elaborate contraptions require teams of operators and occupy entire rooms, making them accessible only to wealthy patients who can afford private treatment facilities. The scientific language surrounding magnetic sleep therapy reveals how Victorian inventors attempted to legitimize their approaches. You read technical manuals describing magnetic field densities, electromagnetic resonance frequencies, and galvanic current intensities with impressive precision. The mathematical formulas and scientific terminology create an aura of legitimate research that helps distinguish these devices from obviously fraudulent patent medicines. Competition between different magnetic sleep therapy systems creates an arms race of increasingly elaborate claims and more complex machinery. Each inventor must differentiate his approach from competitors, leading to innovations like reversible polarity chambers, harmonic magnetic oscillators, and synchronized electromagnetic pulse generators. The devices become more impressive and more expensive, but not necessarily more effective. As you observe these magnetic sleep chambers in operation, you realize that Victorian inventors are essentially creating the first generation of high-tech sleep aids. While their understanding of magnetism and electricity may be flawed, their recognition that sleep problems might respond to technological solutions proves remarkably prescient. The legacy of magnetic sleep therapy extends far beyond these specific Victorian devices, establishing precedents for using technology to address sleep disorders that will eventually evolve into modern approaches. You step into the private study of Dr. Mortimer Blackwood, where the gaslight flickers across an array of glass bottles containing clear liquids that seem to shimmer with dangerous promise. The sweet chemical scent in the air makes your head feel slightly dizzy. It's chloroform, and you're about to witness one of the most reckless chapters in Victorian sleep medicine. On the mahogany desk lies a leather-bound journal where the good doctor meticulously records his experiments with anaesthetic gases as recreational sleep aids. "The sensation is quite remarkable," Dr. Blackwood explains to his colleague, holding up the small glass vial. 3 or 4 deep inhalations and the most stubborn case of insomnia simply dissolves. The patient drifts into the most peaceful slumber imaginable. You watch with growing unease as he demonstrates the technique on himself, breathing deeply from a chloroform-soaked cloth before settling back into his chair with a blissful expression. This is 1882, and you're witnessing the birth of a dangerous trend that will claim more lives than it saves. The discovery of chloroform's anaesthetic properties by Sir James Young Simpson revolutionised surgery, but Victorian experimenters quickly realised its potential for treating sleep disorders. You observe a typical chloroform sleep session in an upscale London clinic, where wealthy insomniacs pay substantial fees to inhale controlled doses of the anaesthetic under supposed medical supervision. The theory seems logical enough. If chloroform can render patients unconscious for surgery, smaller doses might provide the deep restorative sleep that natural methods cannot achieve. Private chloroform clubs emerge in fashionable neighbourhoods, operating with the discretion of gentlemen's establishments, but serving a far more dangerous purpose. You slip into one such gathering, where well-dressed men and women recline on velvet couches while attendants circulate with bottles and inhalation masks. The atmosphere combines the sophistication of a wine tasting with the reckless abandon of a dangerous experiment. Members compare their experiences like connoisseurs, discussing the quality of different chloroform preparations and debating optimal dosages for various types of sleep disturbance. The medical establishment's relationship with chloroform sleep therapy remains complex and contradictory. You read medical journal articles where respected physicians simultaneously warn against recreational chloroform use while documenting its effectiveness for treating severe insomnia cases. The same doctors who would never prescribe laudanum for minor complaints seem willing to experiment with anaesthetic gases that carry far greater risks of accidental overdose. Women represent a particularly tragic demographic in chloroform sleep therapy. Victorian medical theory suggests that feminine nervous systems respond more favourably to gaseous treatments than to solid medications. You observe female patients who turn to chloroform inhalation as a supposedly more refined alternative to laudanum or patent medicines. The social acceptability of taking the vapours provides cover for what amounts to recreational anaesthetic abuse. The apparatus used for chloroform sleep induction evolves with Victorian mechanical ingenuity. You encounter elaborate devices designed to deliver precisely measured doses. Breathing masks connected to glass chambers where chloroform evaporates at controlled rates, mechanical bellows that regulate vapour concentration, and even automatic timers that supposedly prevent accidental overdoses. The sophistication of the equipment creates an illusion of safety that the actual chemical properties of chloroform simply cannot support. Home chloroform kits become disturbingly popular among middle-class families seeking affordable sleep solutions. You examine a typical domestic setup: a small bottle of chloroform, a specially designed inhalation mask, and a detailed instruction manual promising safe self-administration. The marketing materials emphasize the convenience and privacy of home treatment, conveniently omitting warnings about the narrow margin between therapeutic and lethal doses. Historians still argue whether Victorian doctors genuinely believed chloroform could be safely used for sleep therapy, or whether professional arrogance prevented them from acknowledging the obvious dangers. The medical literature reveals a pattern of initial enthusiasm followed by growing concern as unexplained deaths accumulate among patients using chloroform sleep aids. The international nature of chloroform experimentation creates a dangerous exchange of ideas and techniques. You discover correspondence between British, French, and German physicians sharing their experiences with anaesthetic sleep therapy. Each national medical community contributes its own variations and innovations, creating a global network of chloroform experimentation that operates largely outside conventional medical oversight. Quality control represents an enormous problem in the chloroform sleep industry. You examine bottles from different suppliers and notice dramatic variations in purity and concentration. Some preparations contain barely enough chloroform to have sedative effects, while others are concentrated enough to cause immediate unconsciousness or death. Consumers have no reliable way to judge the strength of what they're purchasing. The social ritual surrounding chloroform sleep therapy adds an element of ceremony that enhances its psychological appeal. You witness a typical session. Patients arrive at specialized clinics, undergo consultation with attendants who wear medical-looking uniforms, and participate in elaborate preparation rituals involving special clothing, breathing exercises, and environmental controls. The theatrical elements help justify the substantial fees while creating expectations that enhance whatever placebo effects the treatment might provide. Children become victims of chloroform sleep therapy through parental desperation and medical ignorance. You observe pediatric cases where doctors prescribe chloroform inhalation for everything from teething discomfort to childhood insomnia. The tragic irony is that children's smaller body mass makes them particularly vulnerable to accidental overdoses, yet their inability to self-regulate dosage makes home treatment especially dangerous. The economic incentives surrounding chloroform sleep therapy create pressure to ignore mounting safety concerns. You notice how medical practitioners who invest in expensive chloroform equipment and specialized facilities have financial motivations to continue promoting the treatment despite accumulating evidence of its dangers. The substantial fees that wealthy patients will pay for exotic sleep remedies make it difficult for practitioners to abandon lucrative chloroform practices. As you observe the chloroform sleep therapy phenomenon, you realize you're witnessing a perfect storm of medical hubris, inadequate safety testing, and desperate consumer demand that will eventually force Victorian medicine to confront the limits of experimental treatment. You find yourself in the workshop of Reginald Pemberton, Victorian engineer and self-proclaimed sleep mechanist, surrounded by the most peculiar collection of contraptions you've ever encountered. Gears tick rhythmically, springs compress and release with measured precision, and somewhere in the mechanical symphony, a full-sized adult cradle rocks slowly back and forth. The air smells of machine oil and determination as Pemberton explains his revolutionary approach. If sleep won't come naturally, we shall simply engineer it into existence. The centerpiece of his collection is the somnambulistic oscillation bed, a marvel of Victorian engineering that combines the soothing motion of a cradle with the precision of clockwork. You watch as a volunteer test subject climbs onto the padded platform, which immediately begins a complex pattern of gentle rocking, rotating and swaying motions. The bed operates on a system of counterweights and springs that can maintain its rhythmic movement for up to 8 hours without winding, creating what Pemberton calls mechanical maternal comfort for the adult nervous system. The theoretical foundation for mechanical sleep induction draws from observations of infant sleep patterns and emerging theories about motion sickness. You examine Pemberton's detailed notes documenting how rhythmic movement affects different aspects of consciousness. Lateral rocking supposedly calms anxiety, Vertical oscillation reduces mental activity, and rotational motion induces the drowsiness experienced during carriage rides. His approach treats insomnia as a mechanical problem requiring a mechanical solution. Breathing regulation devices represent another category of Victorian sleep machinery. You encounter the pneumatic sleep regulator, a contraption that fits over the sleeper's nose and mouth, mechanically controlling the rhythm and depth of respiration. The theory suggests that irregular breathing patterns contribute to insomnia, and external mechanical control can establish the steady respiratory rhythm associated with deep sleep. The device uses a system of bellows and valves to impose what its inventor calls optimal sleep breathing on subjects who cannot naturally achieve proper respiratory patterns. The variety of mechanical sleep aids reflects impressive Victorian ingenuity, combined with desperate market demand. You observe the cranial percussion engine, a helmet-like device that delivers gentle rhythmic tapping to specific points on the skull, supposedly stimulating sleep-inducing pressure points identified through phrenological analysis. Another invention, the sympathetic vibration chamber, encases the sleeper in a wooden box that resonates with carefully tuned musical frequencies designed to harmonize with natural sleep rhythms. Automated massage devices promise to deliver the relaxation benefits of human touch through mechanical precision. You examine the mechanical mesmerist, a complex apparatus of rotating brushes, vibrating pads, and oscillating pressure points that can deliver a full-body massage without human operators. The machine follows pre-programmed sequences designed to systematically relax different muscle groups in the precise order that sleep researchers believe leads to natural drowsiness. The social aspects of mechanical sleep therapy create interesting dynamics between patients and practitioners. You witness consultations where sleep engineers conduct detailed interviews about individual insomnia patterns, then customize mechanical devices to address specific problems. The personal attention and technical expertise involved in this process provides psychological benefits that mass-produced remedies cannot match, even if the actual mechanical effects remain questionable. Historians still argue whether Victorian mechanical sleep devices represent legitimate medical innovation or elaborate placebo delivery systems, but the evidence suggests that many patients experienced genuine improvement. The combination of rhythmic motion, focused attention, and ritualized treatment procedures creates conditions that can genuinely promote relaxation, regardless of whether the specific mechanical theories prove correct. Women's mechanical sleep aids often incorporate elements of domestic comfort and feminine aesthetics. You observe specially designed devices that resemble elegant furniture rather than medical equipment. Rocking chairs with hidden clockwork mechanisms, musical jewelry boxes that play sleep-inducing melodies while delivering gentle vibrations, and decorative fans that create precisely controlled air currents designed to promote drowsiness through temperature regulation. The economics of mechanical sleep therapy requires substantial initial investment but promises long-term profits through equipment rental and maintenance services. You notice how sleep engineers operate more like luxury furniture makers than medical practitioners, crafting custom devices for wealthy clients who can afford both the initial expense and ongoing service costs. The business model relies on creating impressive, personalized solutions that justify premium pricing. Competition between mechanical sleep innovators drives increasingly elaborate and specialized devices. You encounter machines designed for specific demographics. The commercial traveler's portable sleep oscillator for businessmen who need rest while away from home. The maternal slumber assistant for new mothers requiring rest between infant feedings. And the scholar's contemplative rest engine for academics whose mental activity prevents natural sleep on set. Quality control in mechanical sleep devices varies dramatically between manufacturers. You examine products ranging from precisely engineered clockwork mechanisms that operate reliably for years to crude contraptions that break down after a few uses. The lack of standardized testing means that consumers must rely on manufacturer claims and testimonials to evaluate device effectiveness and safety. The noise factor creates an ironic problem for many mechanical sleep aids. You observe how devices intended to promote quiet rest often generate their own sounds: clicking gears, creaking springs, humming motors, and rhythmic mechanical movements. Some inventors embrace this acoustic element, arguing that predictable mechanical sounds provide the auditory consistency that promotes sleep, while others struggle to create silent operation. Combination devices represent the logical extreme of Victorian mechanical sleep engineering. You encounter the comprehensive slumber automation system, a room-sized installation that coordinates rocking motions, breathing regulation, temperature control, acoustic therapy, and gentle massage through an elaborate system of gears, pulleys, and timing mechanisms. The device requires a dedicated operator and occupies an entire bedroom, making it accessible only to the wealthiest patients. As you observe these mechanical sleep contraptions in operation, you realize that Victorian engineers are pioneering approaches to sleep disorders that will eventually evolve into modern technologies, even if their specific implementations seem charmingly primitive from your perspective. You step through the ornate entrance of Coldwater Springs hydropathic establishment, where the sound of rushing water mingles with the muffled groans of patients undergoing what Victorian medicine optimistically calls the water cure. Steam rises from treatment rooms while attendants wheel barrel after barrel of ice toward the bathing chambers. The marble floors gleam with moisture, and everywhere you look, people in wet sheets shuffle about like ghostly figures in a particularly damp purgatory. Dr. Vincent Priestnitz's revolutionary hydropathic theories have spawned an entire industry of water-based sleep treatments that range from mildly uncomfortable to genuinely torturous. You observe the morning routine at this fashionable spa. Patients awakened at dawn for ice-cold plunge baths, followed by hours wrapped in wet sheets, then alternating hot and cold shower treatments that supposedly shock their systems into proper sleep rhythms. The theory suggests that insomnia results from impure blood and nervous congestion that only aggressive water therapy can correct. The wet sheet pack represents the signature treatment of hydropathic sleep therapy. You watch as attendants wrap a fully clothed gentleman in sheets soaked with cold water, then cover him with layers of wool blankets. He'll remain in this soggy cocoon for the next 4 hours while his body temperature fluctuates wildly and his nervous system presumably resets itself. The expression on his face suggests that if this treatment cures his insomnia, it may be because he's too exhausted from the ordeal to stay awake. Cold water treatments reach extremes that seem designed more for punishment than therapy. You witness the Arctic sleep induction protocol, a treatment that begins with a scalding hot bath, followed immediately by immersion in water so cold that ice crystals float on the surface. Patients emerge blue-lipped and shivering, their bodies supposedly shocked into the kind of deep fatigue that guarantees unconsciousness. The medical theory claims that this temperature contrast reorganizes the vital forces and harmonizes the sleep-wake cycle. The social dynamics of hydropathic establishments create communities of suffering that bond patients through shared misery. You observe conversations between spa guests comparing their treatment experiences, who endured the longest cold plunge, whose wet sheet pack produced the most dramatic perspiration, which patients show the greatest improvement in sleep quality. The communal aspect of water cure therapy provides psychological support that individual treatments cannot offer. Women's hydropathic treatments often incorporate theories about feminine physiology that reflect Victorian medical prejudices. You witness female patients undergoing specialized procedures designed to address uterine congestion and ovarian excitability that supposedly contribute to sleep disorders. The treatments involve strategic application of hot and cold water to specific body regions, based on anatomical theories that modern medicine would find laughably incorrect, but that Victorian doctors present with complete scientific confidence. The architectural design of hydropathic facilities reflects the movement's ambitious therapeutic goals. You explore treatment rooms equipped with elaborate plumbing systems that can deliver water at precise temperatures and pressures. Some facilities feature artificial waterfalls for natural shower therapy, underground cold springs for earth cure immersion, and steam rooms that recreate the supposed therapeutic benefits of volcanic hot springs. Dietary restrictions accompany water treatments at most hydropathic establishments, creating comprehensive lifestyle interventions that extend far beyond simple water applications. You observe patients consuming meals consisting entirely of cold foods and room temperature water, based on theories that hot foods and warm drinks interfere with the body's natural cooling processes that supposedly promote sleep. The combination of physical discomfort and nutritional restriction creates conditions that might indeed produce exhaustion, though whether this constitutes therapeutic sleep remains questionable. Historians still argue whether hydropathic sleep treatments provided genuine medical benefits or simply created such physical stress that patients collapse from exhaustion. But contemporary testimonials suggest that many people experienced real improvement in their sleep patterns. The combination of physical challenge, social support, and removal from normal life stresses may have created conditions that actually promoted better rest, regardless of whether these specific water cure theories proved accurate. The economic model of hydropathic establishments requires substantial infrastructure investment, but generates impressive profits through extended patient stays. You notice how these facilities operate more like luxury hotels than medical institutions, offering weeks or months of residential treatment that appeal to wealthy patients seeking comprehensive solutions to chronic health problems. The spa atmosphere helps justify premium pricing while creating expectations of transformation and renewal. International variations in water cure therapy reflect different national approaches to sleep disorders and medical treatment. You encounter British facilities emphasizing cold water treatments that supposedly build character alongside curing insomnia, German establishments focusing on precise temperature control and scientific measurement, and American spas incorporating elements of frontier ruggedness into their therapeutic programs. The seasonal nature of hydropathic treatment creates interesting business challenges and opportunities. You observe how winter treatments emphasize indoor facilities and artificial temperature control, while summer programs take advantage of natural water sources and outdoor activities. Some establishments offer specialized winter sleep cures that use snow and ice as therapeutic agents, creating treatments that seem designed to make patients grateful for any warm, dry place to rest. Equipment innovation in hydropathic therapy produces increasingly sophisticated water delivery systems. You examine mechanical devices that can produce precisely controlled water jets, rotating shower heads that deliver therapeutic massage through water pressure, and timing mechanisms that automatically regulate temperature changes during treatment sequences. The engineering complexity rivals that of mechanical sleep devices, suggesting that Victorian inventors saw water therapy as equally worthy of technological innovation. The religious and moral dimensions of hydropathic treatment appeal to Victorian sensibilities about virtue and self-improvement. You observe how water cure establishments frame their treatments as opportunities for spiritual purification alongside physical healing. The emphasis on enduring discomfort for therapeutic benefit aligns with broader Victorian beliefs about the relationship between suffering and moral development. As you witness these elaborate water cure rituals, you realize that hydropathic sleep therapy represents Victorian medicine's attempt to harness natural forces for healing, even when those forces seem more likely to traumatize than cure the patients who endure them. You sit down to a peculiar Victorian dinner table where the evening meal has been carefully orchestrated according to the latest theories about digestive sleep science. The clock strikes precisely 6 o'clock as your host, Dr. Algernon Fitzhugh, explains that eating at any other time would disrupt what he calls the gastric sleep cycle. Before you lies an array of foods that seem chosen more for their supposed somnolent properties than their flavour. Warm milk infused with ground lettuce seeds, a porridge made from poppy-containing grains, and what appears to be a soup composed entirely of ingredients beginning with the letter S. Because according to Dr. Fitzhugh's theory, sibilant foods promote slumber. The Victorian obsession with digestive timing reaches almost ritualistic proportions in households struggling with chronic insomnia. You observe families where every meal is scheduled according to complex calculations designed to optimize sleep onset. Breakfast at dawn to awaken the digestive fires, lunch precisely at noon to maintain gastric harmony, and dinner completed exactly 4 hours before intended bedtime to allow proper alimentary settlement. The dining room clock becomes as important as any medical instrument, marking not just time but the rhythm of hoped-for rest. Dr. Fitzhugh's personal theory connects specific foods to sleep quality through what he calls sympathetic digestion. You sample his recommended evening menu. Foods that are naturally drowsy in appearance or behaviour supposedly transfer their sleepy qualities to human consumers. Lettuce earns prominence because it wilts and appears tired, while certain mushrooms make the list because they grow in dark, quiet places. The logic seems charmingly naive from your perspective, but Victorian diners embrace these theories with desperate seriousness. The emerging science of nutrition provides a vocabulary for increasingly elaborate dietary sleep theories. You encounter Dr. Millicent Thornberry's influential pamphlet, Alimentary Insomnia Solutions, which categorizes all foods according to their nervous excitation properties and soporific potential. According to her system, proteins stimulate mental activity and should be avoided after noon, while carbohydrates promote drowsiness and should dominate evening meals. Her followers plan their entire days around these nutritional sleep calculations. Digestive timing theories create complex social protocols around Victorian dining. You witness dinner parties where hostesses carefully sequence courses according to sleep-promoting principles. Light soups to prepare the stomach, bland middle courses to avoid excitement, and sweet desserts to encourage pleasant dreams. Conversation topics are similarly regulated. Stimulating discussions about politics or business are forbidden after sunset, replaced by gentle topics deemed suitable for pre-sleep mental states. The patent medicine industry capitalizes on dietary sleep theories by creating specialized food products designed specifically for insomniacs. You examine advertisements for Dr. Slumberland's Sleepy Time biscuits, Professor Nightcap's drowsy digestives, and the original Morpheus milk powder, each promising to deliver precise nutritional combinations that guarantee peaceful rest. These products often combine conventional foods with mild sedative herbs, creating edible sleep aids that seem more natural than liquid medications. Women face particular dietary restrictions based on Victorian theories about feminine digestion and sleep patterns. You observe households where wives and daughters follow entirely different evening meal schedules from their male relatives, consuming smaller portions of blander foods based on medical beliefs about delicate feminine digestive systems. Some theories suggest that women require cooling foods in the evening while men need warming foods, leading to separate meal preparations that double the work of household kitchens. The international influence of different national cuisines creates competing theories about optimal sleep diets. You encounter British physicians advocating heavy, warming foods for evening consumption, French doctors promoting light wines and delicate preparations, and German medical authorities recommending systematic elimination of all stimulating spices and seasonings. Each national approach claims scientific superiority while reflecting broader cultural attitudes toward food and health. Historians still argue whether Victorian dietary sleep theories contained any genuine nutritional wisdom or simply provided psychological comfort through ritualized eating patterns, but some of their observations prove remarkably prescient. The recognition that large meals before bedtime can disrupt sleep, that alcohol initially promotes drowsiness but later causes awakening, and that caffeine interferes with rest all anticipate modern sleep hygiene recommendations. The economic implications of specialized sleep diets create new market opportunities for food producers and retailers. You observe grocery stores developing special sections for somnolent supplies, restaurants offering pre-sleep dining experiences, and cookbook publishers producing volumes dedicated entirely to sleep-promoting recipes. The commercial potential of dietary sleep theories transforms eating from a simple necessity into a medical intervention. Seasonal variations in sleep diets reflect Victorian beliefs about how different times of year require different nutritional approaches to rest. You witness households that shift their entire eating patterns according to calendar seasons, winter menus emphasizing warming, heavy foods that supposedly promote longer sleep periods, while summer diets focus on cooling, lighter preparations designed to prevent overheating during warm nights. The measurement and documentation of dietary sleep experiments produces an impressive body of Victorian pseudoscientific literature. You examine detailed journals where patients record not just what they ate and when they slept, but precise correlations between specific foods and dream content, sleep duration, and morning alertness levels. These amateur researchers approach their eating patterns with scientific methodology, even if their theoretical foundations remain questionable. Children's sleep diets receive special attention from Victorian parents, desperate to ensure their offspring get adequate rest. You observe nursery meals designed according to pediatric sleep theories. Warm milk with honey to promote drowsiness, bland porridges to avoid digestive excitement, and strict prohibition of stimulating foods like chocolate or spiced cakes after midday. The entire family's eating schedule often revolves around children's sleep needs. As you finish Dr. Fitzhugh's carefully orchestrated meal, you realize that Victorian dietary sleep theories represent an attempt to transform the most basic human activities, eating, into a medical intervention that promises to solve the fundamental problem of sleeplessness through nutritional precision. You enter the dimly lit parlour of Madame Celestine's establishment, where velvet curtains block the afternoon sun and candles cast dancing shadows across mysterious apparatus arranged with theatrical precision. The air carries the scent of sandalwood and something else, an electrical tension that makes the hair on your arms stand slightly on end. Madame Celestine herself appears almost ethereal in her flowing robes, her eyes fixed on yours with unsettling intensity as she explains her revolutionary approach to sleep disorders. The mind controls the body, mon cher, and I control the mind. Mental magnetism represents the Victorian fusion of emerging psychology with ancient mystical traditions, creating a therapeutic approach that treats insomnia as a problem of mental energy rather than physical malfunction. You watch as Madame Celestine demonstrates her technique on a nervous gentleman who has suffered from sleeplessness for months. Her hands hover inches above his forehead, while she speaks in low, rhythmic tones about relaxation, peace, and the irresistible approach of natural sleep. Within minutes his breathing deepens and his eyes flutter closed, though whether from genuine magnetism or simple suggestion remains mysteriously unclear. The theoretical foundation of mental magnetism draws from Franz Anton Mesmer's theories about invisible fluids that flow between human beings, combined with newer ideas about the power of concentrated mental energy. You observe practitioners who claim they can project calming influences directly into their patients' nervous systems, bypassing the need for drugs or mechanical devices. The treatment requires nothing more than focused attention and mysterious personal magnetism, making it accessible to practitioners who lack medical training or expensive equipment. Professional mesmerists establish practices throughout Victorian cities, advertising their services with impressive testimonials and scientific-sounding credentials. You examine the business cards of various practitioners. Professor Hypnos, graduate of the Vienna Institute of Animal Magnetism. Dr. Morpheus Blackwood, certified practitioner of magnetic sleep induction. And the amazing somnambula, Mistress of Mental Magnetism. The titles sound impressive enough to convince desperate insomniacs that they're consulting legitimate medical specialists. The social dynamics of mental magnetism sessions create intimate therapeutic relationships that conventional medicine cannot match. You witness the careful attention that magnetists pay to their patients' individual stories, fears, and sleep difficulties. The treatment begins with extensive consultation about personal history, emotional states, and specific insomnia patterns, creating a level of personalized care that busy physicians rarely provide. This psychological attention may contribute as much to therapeutic success as any actual magnetic effects. Group magnetism sessions emerge as a popular and profitable variation on individual treatment. You observe evening gatherings where a single magnetist attempts to induce sleep in multiple patients simultaneously. The parlour fills with people reclining in comfortable chairs while the practitioner moves between them, hands extended, channeling what he describes as universal sleep magnetism throughout the room. The group setting creates social pressure to respond appropriately while reducing individual treatment costs. Women represent a particularly important demographic for mental magnetism practitioners. Victorian medical theory suggests that feminine nervous systems are naturally more susceptible to magnetic influences, making women ideal candidates for this type of treatment. You notice how many female magnetists establish practices specifically for other women, offering treatments in private settings that avoid the potential impropriety of male practitioners working with female patients. The apparatus used in mental magnetism sessions varies dramatically between practitioners, ranging from simple chairs and soothing decor to elaborate pseudo-scientific devices. You encounter magnetists who employ crystals, mirrors, metallic conductors, and specially designed furniture that supposedly focuses and amplifies their personal magnetic emanations. The more impressive the equipment, the higher the fees practitioners can command from patients seeking sophisticated treatment. Historians still argue whether mental magnetism represents legitimate early psychology or elaborate performance art, but the evidence suggests that many patients experienced genuine improvement in their sleep patterns. The combination of focused attention, relaxation techniques, and suggestion creates conditions that can actually promote better rest, regardless of whether practitioners possess any supernatural abilities. The training and certification of mental magnetists creates an informal medical specialty with its own schools, examinations, and professional standards. You discover institutes that teach magnetic sleep induction through courses lasting several months, complete with theoretical instruction, practical exercises, and supervised patient interaction. Graduates receive impressive certificates that help establish their credibility with potential patients. Competition between different schools of mental magnetism leads to increasingly elaborate theoretical systems and treatment approaches. You encounter practitioners who specialize in solar magnetism, treatments conducted only during daylight hours, lunar magnetism, sessions timed to lunar phases, and seasonal magnetism, techniques that change according to calendar seasons. Each approach claims unique advantages and superior results. The international exchange of mental magnetism techniques creates a global network of practitioners sharing methods and theories. You observe correspondence between British, French, German, and American magnetists describing their various approaches to sleep induction. European practitioners often emphasize classical mesmerism, while American magnetists incorporate elements of spiritualism and frontier self-reliance into their therapeutic methods. Quality control in mental magnetism practice depends entirely on individual practitioner abilities and ethics, creating enormous variation in treatment quality and safety. You encounter magnetists ranging from skilled practitioners who provide genuine therapeutic benefit through suggestion and relaxation techniques to obvious charlatans who exploit vulnerable patients without providing any real assistance. The relationship between mental magnetism and emerging scientific psychology creates interesting tensions within the medical establishment. You observe how some physicians dismiss magnetism as the pure superstition, while others attempt to incorporate magnetic techniques into conventional medical practice. The debate reflects broader Victorian struggles to distinguish legitimate psychological treatment from supernatural claims. Children become subjects of mental magnetism treatment through parental desperation and practitioners who claim special abilities with young patients. You witness pediatric sessions where magnetists work with sleepless children, using gentle techniques that often resemble modern play therapy, more than mysterious magnetic manipulation. The attention and care involved in these treatments may provide genuine benefits regardless of any supposed magnetic effects. As you observe these mental magnetism sessions, you realize that Victorian practitioners are pioneering psychological approaches to sleep disorders that will eventually evolve into legitimate psychotherapy, even if their specific theoretical frameworks seem charmingly mystical from your modern perspective. You find yourself at dawn on the grounds of Colonel Reginald Biffington's Military Sleep Academy, where the sound of whistles pierces the morning air and exhausted-looking civilians in makeshift uniforms stumble through what appears to be an obstacle course designed by someone who believes insomnia can be conquered through sheer physical exhaustion. The Colonel himself, a veteran of colonial campaigns with an impressive mustache and even more impressive voice, bellows instructions to his bleary-eyed recruits, "If you can't sleep naturally, by God, we'll tire you into unconsciousness." The military approach to sleep disorders reflects Victorian beliefs about the relationship between physical exertion and natural rest patterns. You observe the daily routine that Colonel Biffington has developed for civilian insomniacs. Reveille at 5 o'clock, followed by calisthenics, marching drills, manual labour, and what he calls fatigue exercises, specifically designed to exhaust every muscle group. The theory suggests that modern urban life provides insufficient physical challenge, leaving bodies with excess energy that prevents natural sleep onset. The exercise regimens prescribed for sleep disorders reach extremes that would challenge professional athletes. You witness patients performing hundreds of repetitions of basic movements, arm circles designed to exhaust the shoulder girdle, leg lifts intended to drain the lower extremities, and jumping exercises that supposedly fatigue the entire nervous system simultaneously. The medical theory claims that systematic exhaustion of specific muscle groups creates the physical conditions necessary for deep restorative sleep. Dr. Millicent Ashworth's feminine fatigue therapy adapts military-style exercise for Victorian ladies who cannot participate in Colonel Biffington's more aggressive programs. You observe her clinic where women in modified exercise costumes perform genteel versions of exhausting activities. Vigorous needlework designed to tire the arms, energetic dancing that supposedly drains nervous energy, and walking routines that cover impressive distances while maintaining social respectability. The exercises appear delicate but prove surprisingly demanding. Gymnasium-based sleep therapy creates specialized fitness facilities dedicated specifically to treating insomnia through planned physical exhaustion. You explore one such establishment where patients follow individualized exercise prescriptions designed to address their specific sleep complaints. Rapid walking for those whose minds race at bedtime, heavy lifting for patients who report feeling physically restless, and complex movement sequences for insomniacs who struggle with coordination between mental and physical fatigue. The timing of exercise treatments reflects sophisticated theories about how physical activity affects sleep cycles. You observe facilities that offer different exercise schedules for different types of insomnia. Morning workouts for patients who struggle with early awakening, afternoon sessions for those who experience evening restlessness, and even late-night exercise programs for people whose sleep schedules have become completely reversed. The precision of these timing protocols suggests genuine observation of how exercise affects individual sleep patterns. Outdoor exercise therapy takes advantage of Victorian beliefs about the health benefits of fresh air and natural environments. You follow groups of insomniacs on supervised hiking expeditions through countryside surrounding major cities, their guides leading them through increasingly challenging terrain designed to produce the kind of comprehensive exhaustion that indoor exercise cannot achieve. The combination of physical exertion and natural surroundings creates therapeutic conditions that many patients find more appealing than gymnasium-based programs. The social aspects of group exercise therapy provide psychological benefits beyond simple physical fatigue. You witness the camaraderie that develops between patients who share similar sleep struggles, encouraging each other through difficult workout sessions and celebrating improvements in both fitness and sleep quality. The group dynamic creates accountability and motivation that individual exercise prescriptions often lack. Historians still argue whether Victorian exercise therapy for sleep disorders represented legitimate medical insight or simply reflected cultural biases about the virtues of hard work and physical discipline, but many of their observations about the relationship between activity and rest prove remarkably accurate. The recognition that sedentary lifestyles can contribute to sleep problems and that appropriate exercise can improve sleep quality anticipates modern sleep medicine recommendations. The economic model of exercise-based sleep therapy creates new business opportunities for fitness entrepreneurs and former military officers seeking civilian careers. You observe how these establishments combine elements of gymnasiums, military training facilities, and medical clinics to create unique therapeutic environments that appeal to patients seeking alternatives to pharmaceutical treatments. The emphasis on discipline and character building helps justify premium pricing. Equipment innovation in exercise sleep therapy produces specialized apparatus designed specifically for inducing fatigue rather than building strength or skill. You encounter machines that require repetitive motions without productive purpose, exercise devices that become progressively more difficult as patients use them, and apparatus that measures and documents the precise degree of exhaustion achieved during each session. The engineering reflects Victorian fascination with quantifying and mechanizing even the most basic human activities. Women's exercise therapy faces particular challenges due to social restrictions on feminine physical activity and medical theories about female physiology. You observe specialized programs that promise to provide adequate physical exhaustion while maintaining social respectability. Exercises performed in private settings, movements that can be completed while wearing conventional clothing, and activities that avoid any appearance of masculine athleticism. The measurement and documentation of exercise-induced sleep improvement creates an impressive body of Victorian fitness literature. You examine detailed case studies where patients record their daily exercise activities alongside sleep duration, dream content, and morning alertness levels. These amateur researchers approach their fitness routines with scientific methodology, seeking to identify the precise combination of activities that produces optimal sleep results. International variations in exercise sleep therapy reflect different national approaches to physical fitness and medical treatment. You encounter British programs emphasizing outdoor activities and military discipline, German establishments focusing on systematic gymnasium exercises and precise measurement, and American facilities incorporating elements of frontier ruggedness and competitive sports into their therapeutic programs. Seasonal modifications in exercise therapy acknowledge how different weather conditions affect both physical activity and sleep patterns. You observe how winter programs emphasize indoor exercises and artificial heating to maintain therapeutic sweating, while summer sessions take advantage of longer daylight hours and outdoor activities that would be impossible during colder months. As you complete your own exhausting day at Colonel Biffington's Academy, You realize that Victorian exercise therapy for sleep disorders represents an intuitive understanding of the connection between physical activity and rest quality that modern sleep medicine has validated, even if their specific methods seem charmingly extreme from your perspective. You step into the Arctic sleep pavilion of Dr. Cornelius Winterbourne's Climate Therapy Institute, where your breath immediately forms visible clouds in the frigid air and attendants wearing fur-lined coats tend braziers that provide the only sources of warmth in this deliberately frozen chamber. The thermometer on the wall reads a shocking 15 degrees below freezing, while Dr. Winterbourne himself, bundled in what appears to be an entire polar bear, explains his revolutionary theory. The human sleep mechanism evolved in Ice Age conditions, and modern heating has disrupted our natural capacity for deep winter slumber. The temperature-based approach to sleep therapy reflects Victorian fascination with extreme climate manipulation as a medical intervention. You observe patients who have travelled hundreds of miles to experience Dr. Winterbourne's glacial sleep induction protocol, a treatment that begins with gradual cooling over several hours, followed by supervised sleep attempts in temperatures that would challenge Arctic explorers. The theory suggests that cold exposure triggers ancient biological responses that promote deeper, more restorative sleep than temperate conditions can achieve. Opposite extremes appear at Dr. Flavia Scorching's Desert Sleep Emporium, where artificial heating systems maintain temperatures that rival the Sahara Desert. You enter treatment chambers where patients recline on specially designed beds, while heated air circulates around them at carefully controlled temperatures. Dr. Scorching's theory directly contradicts Dr. Winterbourne's approach, claiming that warmth relaxes the nervous system and promotes the kind of drowsy lethargy that naturally leads to sleep on set. The competition between hot and cold sleep therapies creates bitter professional rivalries and passionate theoretical debates. You witness heated exchanges, if you'll pardon the expression, between practitioners who claim their temperature approach represents the only scientifically valid treatment for chronic insomnia. Medical journals publish lengthy articles defending the superiority of thermal versus frigid sleep induction, complete with case studies, testimonials, and elaborate theoretical justifications for each approach. Seasonal sleep migration emerges as the logical extreme of climate-based therapy. You encounter wealthy patients who follow elaborate travel schedules designed to maintain optimal sleep temperatures year-round. Summers in Scotland's coldest highlands for those who favour frigid sleep therapy. Winters in artificially heated southern European spas for proponents of warm weather treatments. The seasonal migration of insomniacs creates an entire tourism industry dedicated to therapeutic climate manipulation. Altitude therapy represents another dimension of climate-based sleep treatment. You ascend to Dr. Alpheus Mountaintop's high-altitude sleep retreat, perched on a peak where the thin air supposedly creates conditions that naturally promote drowsiness and deep sleep. Patients struggle with the reduced oxygen levels while their bodies adjust to what Dr. Mountaintop calls therapeutic atmospheric pressure. The theory suggests that modern urban air contains too much oxygen, overstimulating nervous systems that evolved at higher elevations. The apparatus required for extreme climate therapy reaches impressive levels of Victorian engineering sophistication. You examine the mechanical systems that Dr. Winterbourne uses to maintain Arctic conditions: steam-powered refrigeration units, insulated chambers with precisely controlled ventilation, and heating systems that can be rapidly activated for emergency warming. The technology rivals that of contemporary industrial applications, suggesting serious investment in climate manipulation equipment. Combination climate therapies attempt to harness the benefits of both temperature extremes through alternating exposure protocols. You witness treatments that cycle patients between hot and cold chambers according to carefully calculated schedules. 30 minutes in desert heat followed by 15 minutes of Arctic cold, repeated throughout the night in patterns designed to exhaust the body's temperature regulation systems and force deep sleep through sheer physiological confusion. The social dynamics of extreme climate therapy create unique communities of patients who bond through shared environmental challenges. You observe how Arctic sleep patients develop camaraderie similar to polar explorers, while desert therapy participants form relationships based on surviving extreme heat together. The shared ordeal creates psychological support networks that may contribute as much to therapeutic success as the actual climate manipulation. Historians still argue whether Victorian climate therapy represented legitimate medical insight about temperature's effects on sleep or simply reflected cultural fascination with extreme experiences and exotic travel. But some observations prove remarkably prescient. Modern sleep research confirms that body temperature regulation plays crucial roles in sleep onset and quality, validating Victorian recognition of thermal factors in sleep disorders. Women's climate therapy requires special considerations due to Victorian beliefs about feminine sensitivity to temperature extremes. You observe specialized programs that promise to provide therapeutic climate benefits while maintaining social propriety. Private chambers where ladies can undergo treatment without male supervision, modified clothing designed for extreme temperature exposure, and graduated protocols that accommodate supposedly delicate feminine constitutions. The international dimension of climate therapy creates competition between different national approaches to therapeutic temperature manipulation. You encounter British practitioners emphasizing cold exposure and rugged endurance, Mediterranean establishments promoting warm weather healing traditions, and alpine facilities claiming unique advantages from mountain air and elevation. Each regional approach incorporates local climate conditions into their therapeutic theories. Quality control in extreme climate therapy presents obvious safety challenges that Victorian practitioners address with varying degrees of competence. You observe facilities ranging from sophisticated operations with trained medical staff and emergency protocols to dangerous establishments where inadequate supervision puts patients at genuine risk of hypothermia or heat stroke. The dramatic nature of these treatments amplifies both potential benefits and serious dangers. The economic model of climate therapy requires substantial infrastructure investment but generates impressive profits through extended residential treatment programs. You notice how these establishments operate more like luxury resorts than medical facilities, offering comprehensive lifestyle experiences that appeal to wealthy patients seeking dramatic interventions for chronic health problems. The exotic nature of extreme climate manipulation helps justify premium pricing. Measurement and documentation of climate therapy results produces detailed records of how temperature manipulation affects individual sleep patterns. You examine patient journals that track correlations between specific temperatures, humidity levels, air pressure, and sleep quality with impressive precision. These Victorian climate researchers approach their environmental manipulations with scientific methodology that anticipates modern sleep laboratory techniques. As you experience both the Arctic freeze of Dr. Winterbourne's facility and the desert heat of Dr. Scorching's establishment, you realize that Victorian climate therapy represents an intuitive understanding of how environmental factors affect sleep quality, even if their extreme approaches seem unnecessarily dramatic from your modern perspective. You enter the sound laboratory of Professor Harmonica Slumber, where the walls are lined with peculiar acoustic devices that hum, whistle, and drone in carefully orchestrated patterns designed to lull the human brain into submission. The professor himself, wearing specially designed ear coverings that supposedly protect him from his own sleep-inducing sounds, demonstrates his latest invention, a mechanical orchestra of tuning forks, rotating cylinders, and vibrating strings that produces what he calls scientifically precise somnolent symphonies. The theoretical foundation of Victorian sound therapy draws from emerging understanding of how rhythmic patterns affect consciousness and newly discovered connections between auditory stimulation and nervous system responses. You observe Professor Slumber's elaborate charts documenting which frequencies supposedly promote drowsiness, which rhythmic patterns induce relaxation, and which combinations of sounds can override the mental activity that prevents natural sleep onset. His approach treats insomnia as an acoustic problem requiring carefully engineered auditory solutions. Musical sleep therapy represents the more refined approach to sound-based treatment. You attend an evening concert at Madame Nocturne's Institute for Therapeutic Melodies, where professional musicians perform compositions specifically written to promote sleep rather than entertainment. The program includes Lullaby for Exhausted Businessmen, performed on specially tuned instruments, soporific sonata in the key of drowsiness, and an ambitious piece called Symphony for the Sleepless that supposedly guides listeners through the precise stages of natural sleep onset. Mechanical sound devices eliminate the need for live musicians while providing consistent, controllable acoustic environments. You examine Professor Slumber's automatic drowsiness engine, a clockwork contraption that can operate for hours without human intervention, producing steady combinations of tones, rhythms, and white noise that supposedly replicate the sound conditions most conducive to deep sleep. The device represents Victorian engineering applied to the challenge of creating perfectly optimized acoustic sleep environments. The opposite approach appears at Dr. Silence Profound's Institute for Therapeutic Quietude, where patients undergo treatment in chambers designed to eliminate sound entirely rather than producing sleep-inducing noise. You experience the unsettling sensation of complete acoustic isolation, where even your own heartbeat becomes audible in the artificial silence. Dr. Profound's theory suggests that modern urban noise pollution overstimulates auditory systems, and only complete silence can allow nervous systems to achieve natural rest. Water sound therapy creates another category of acoustic sleep treatment that harnesses the supposedly natural sedative effects of flowing water. You visit establishments where elaborate fountain systems produce carefully controlled water sounds, gentle trickling for mild insomnia, steady rushing for severe sleep disorders, and complex combinations that cycle through different water flow patterns during the night. The theory draws from observations that people often sleep better near streams, rivers, or ocean waves. The social aspects of group sound therapy create shared acoustic experiences that individual treatments cannot provide. You observe evening sessions where multiple patients recline in comfortable chairs, while musicians or mechanical devices fill the room with sleep-promoting sounds. The group setting allows practitioners to treat several patients simultaneously while creating social pressure to respond appropriately to the therapeutic audio environment. Combination sound and silence therapies attempt to harness the benefits of both acoustic stimulation and auditory deprivation through alternating exposure protocols. You witness treatments that cycle patients between sound-filled chambers and completely quiet rooms according to precisely timed schedules designed to exhaust the auditory nervous system and promote sleep through acoustic confusion. The complexity of these protocols requires elaborate scheduling and specialized facilities. The measurement of sound therapy effectiveness produces detailed documentation of how different acoustic environments affect individual sleep patterns. You examine patient journals that correlate specific sounds, volumes, rhythmic patterns, and frequencies with sleep onset times, dream content, and morning alertness levels. These Victorian audio researchers approach their sound manipulations with scientific methodology that anticipates modern sleep laboratory acoustics research. Historians still argue whether Victorian sound therapy represented legitimate understanding of how auditory stimulation affects sleep, or simply reflected cultural assumptions about music's emotional and psychological effects, but many of their observations prove remarkably accurate. Modern sleep research confirms that consistent low-level sounds can indeed promote sleep, while sudden noises disrupt rest, validating Victorian recognition of acoustic factors in sleep disorders. Women's sound therapy incorporates Victorian beliefs about feminine sensitivity to musical and acoustic stimulation. You observe specialized programs that promise gentle, refined auditory experiences appropriate for supposedly delicate feminine nervous systems. Soft musical performances in private settings, mechanical devices that produce subtle rather than dramatic sounds, and acoustic environments that avoid any sounds deemed too stimulating for ladies. The international exchange of sound therapy techniques creates a global network of practitioners sharing musical compositions, mechanical designs, and theoretical approaches. You encounter correspondence between British, German, and Italian sound therapists describing their various acoustic methods for sleep induction. European practitioners often emphasize classical musical traditions, while American sound therapists incorporate elements of folk music and natural sounds. Professional training in therapeutic sound production creates specialized practitioners who combine musical skills with supposed medical knowledge. You observe institutions that teach students to compose sleep-inducing music, operate complex sound-generating machinery, and analyze individual patient responses to different acoustic interventions. The training program suggests genuine belief in sound therapy's medical legitimacy rather than simple commercial exploitation. Quality control in sound therapy varies dramatically between establishments, creating enormous differences in both acoustic sophistication and therapeutic effectiveness. You encounter facilities ranging from precisely engineered acoustic laboratories with professional-grade equipment to crude operations where amateur musicians attempt to provide therapeutic benefits through conventional performances in ordinary rooms. The economic model of sound therapy creates opportunities for both individual practitioners and larger institutions offering comprehensive acoustic treatment programs. You notice how establishments can generate revenue through both residential treatment programs and equipment sales, as patients often purchase smaller versions of therapeutic sound devices for home use. As you experience the various acoustic environments of Victorian sound therapy, you realize that practitioners are pioneering approaches to sleep disorders that recognize the crucial role of auditory factors in rest quality, establishing precedents for modern white noise machines and sleep sound technologies. You step into the gaslit laboratory of Dr. Nathaniel Morpheus at the newly established London Institute for Sleep Research, where the air hums with the unprecedented excitement of scientific discovery. Unlike the flamboyant showmanship and elaborate theories you've encountered throughout your Victorian sleep cure journey, this space radiates methodical precision. Dr. Morpheus himself, a thin gentleman with ink-stained fingers and wire-rimmed spectacles, peers over detailed charts documenting sleep patterns with the same careful attention that astronomers give to celestial movements. The scientific approach to sleep study represents a revolutionary departure from the patent medicines, magnetic contraptions, and extreme treatments that have dominated the field. You observe Dr. Morpheus conducting what he calls systematic sleep observation, carefully recording the breathing patterns, body movements, and facial expressions of sleeping subjects while measuring room temperature, atmospheric pressure, and other environmental factors with precision instruments. His methodology treats sleep as a natural phenomenon that can be understood through observation and measurement, rather than cured through dramatic intervention. The documentation process produces impressive volumes of data that challenge many popular assumptions about sleep disorders. You examine Dr. Morpheus's detailed case studies tracking individual patients over months or years, noting correlations between sleep quality and factors ranging from diet and exercise to weather patterns and lunar phases. His findings suggest that many Victorian sleep cures succeed primarily through placebo effects rather than their claimed mechanisms, though he's diplomatic enough to present these conclusions carefully, Sleep pattern analysis reveals fascinating individual variations that contradict the Victorian assumption that everyone should sleep identically. You observe Dr. Morpheus documenting how some patients naturally require less sleep than others, how certain individuals function better with afternoon naps, and how sleep needs change with age, health status, and life circumstances. His research suggests that many insomniacs may simply have sleep patterns that don't conform to social expectations rather than medical disorders requiring dramatic treatment. The measurement of sleep quality introduces objective criteria for evaluating treatment effectiveness. You witness Dr. Morpheus using mechanical devices to monitor breathing patterns, recording instruments that track body movement during sleep, and timing mechanisms that precisely measure how long patients require to fall asleep. His quantitative approach provides tools for distinguishing genuine therapeutic benefits from wishful thinking and commercial exaggeration. Environmental factor research produces surprising insights about which external conditions actually affect sleep quality. You observe systematic experiments where Dr. Morpheus manipulates room temperature, air circulation, lighting conditions, and noise levels while carefully measuring their effects on sleep onset and duration. His findings suggest that many elaborate Victorian sleep aids address non-existent problems while ignoring simpler environmental factors that genuinely influence rest quality. The psychological dimension of sleep disorders receives increasingly sophisticated attention as Dr. Morpheus documents connections between emotional states and sleep patterns. You witness his careful interviews with patients about their daily experiences, personal relationships, and sources of stress or anxiety. His research suggests that many sleep problems reflect psychological rather than physical causes, anticipating later developments in psychiatric medicine. Comparative studies of different treatment approaches produce the first systematic evaluations of Victorian sleep cure effectiveness. You examine Dr. Morpheus's careful documentation of how patients respond to various interventions: patent medicines, mechanical devices, climate therapy, exercise regimens, and dietary modifications. His findings reveal enormous variation in individual responses and suggest that no single approach works for everyone. The training of other sleep researchers creates a new medical specialty based on systematic observation rather than theoretical speculation. You observe Dr. Morpheus instructing younger physicians in proper sleep study methodology, how to conduct objective observations, maintain detailed records, and distinguish correlation from causation in their findings. The educational program suggests growing recognition that sleep disorders require specialized knowledge and training. Historians still argue whether Victorian sleep research represented genuine scientific advancement or simply more sophisticated versions of earlier medical theories. But Dr. Morpheus's systematic approach anticipates many principles of modern sleep medicine. His emphasis on individual variation, environmental factors, and psychological influences provides foundations for understanding sleep that transcend the specific limitations of Victorian medical knowledge. The institutional development of sleep research creates the first facilities specifically designed for studying rather than treating sleep disorders. You explore laboratories equipped with specialized furniture for comfortable observation, recording equipment for documenting sleep patterns, and controlled environments for systematic experimentation. The infrastructure suggests serious institutional commitment to understanding sleep as a legitimate subject for scientific investigation. International collaboration between sleep researchers produces the first systematic exchange of findings about sleep patterns across different populations and cultures. You examine correspondence between Dr. Morpheus and researchers in other countries, documenting similarities and differences in sleep disorders, treatment responses, and cultural attitudes toward rest and insomnia. The comparative approach reveals which sleep problems may be universal versus culturally specific. The economic model of scientific sleep research requires different funding sources from commercial sleep cure enterprises. You observe how Dr. Morpheus relies on grants from medical institutions, donations from wealthy patrons interested in scientific advancement, and fees from consultation services that apply research findings to individual patient care. The funding structure reflects growing recognition that understanding sleep requires long-term investment in systematic research rather than quick commercial exploitation. Quality control in scientific sleep research depends on peer review and replication rather than testimonials and marketing claims. You witness Dr. Morpheus presenting his findings to medical societies where other physicians can examine his methodology, question his conclusions, and attempt to reproduce his results in their own practices. The accountability mechanisms distinguish scientific research from commercial promotion. The integration of sleep research findings with clinical practice creates new approaches to treating sleep disorders based on evidence rather than theory. You observe how Morpheus develops treatment recommendations that address the specific factors his research has identified as genuinely important: proper sleep environment, regular schedules, stress management, and realistic expectations about individual sleep needs. As you observe the methodical work of Victorian sleep researchers, you realize that their systematic approach to understanding sleep represents the foundation of modern sleep medicine, even if their specific tools and techniques seem primitive from your perspective. Their recognition that sleep disorders require careful study rather than dramatic intervention establishes principles that will guide scientific approaches to rest and insomnia for generations to come. You stand in the quiet archive of the Royal College of Physicians, surrounded by dusty volumes that chronicle the strange odyssey you've just completed through Victorian sleep medicine. The leather-bound journals, faded advertisements, and yellowed medical reports tell the story of a generation that transformed insomnia from a personal affliction into a medical industry, creating treatments that range from genuinely helpful to absolutely bizarre. As you turn the final pages of this peculiar chapter in medical history, you begin to see which threads from this tapestry of sleep cures survived to influence your modern world. The patent medicine industry's legacy proves surprisingly durable, though its forms have evolved dramatically. You trace the lineage from Victorian laudanum bottles to modern prescription sleep aids, recognizing how the fundamental approach, solving sleep problems through chemical intervention, persists even as the specific chemicals change. The marketing techniques pioneered by 19th century medicine showmen anticipate contemporary pharmaceutical advertising, complete with targeted demographics, lifestyle branding, and carefully crafted testimonials that make insomnia solutions seem both medically necessary and socially desirable. Dr. Morpheus's scientific approach to sleep research establishes foundations that modern sleep medicine continues to build upon. You observe how his emphasis on systematic observation, environmental factors, and individual variation anticipates contemporary sleep studies, polysomnography, and personalized treatment approaches. His recognition that sleep disorders require careful study rather than dramatic intervention provides methodological principles that distinguish legitimate sleep medicine from commercial exploitation, a distinction that remains relevant in your era of sleep apps and wellness marketing. The mechanical sleep devices of Victorian inventors prove remarkably prescient in their recognition that technology could address sleep disorders. You trace clear connections between Pemberton's oscillating beds and modern adjustable mattresses, between pneumatic breathing regulators and contemporary CPAP machines, between acoustic therapy devices and white noise generators. While Victorian engineering seems charmingly primitive, their fundamental insight that sleep problems might require technological solutions establishes precedents for the sleep technology industry that flourishes in your time. Temperature therapy's extreme Victorian applications evolved into more moderate but persistent approaches to sleep environment optimization. You recognize how Dr. Winterbourne's Arctic chambers and Dr. Scorching's desert treatments anticipated modern understanding of thermoregulation's role in sleep quality. Contemporary recommendations about bedroom temperature, cooling mattresses, and climate control systems reflect Victorian recognition that thermal factors significantly influence rest, though thankfully without requiring patients to endure genuine Arctic conditions. The dietary approaches to sleep disorders prove surprisingly sophisticated in their recognition of connections between nutrition and rest quality. You observe how Victorian theories about meal timing, food selection, and digestive patterns anticipate modern sleep hygiene recommendations about caffeine restriction, evening meal scheduling, and the relationship between blood sugar stability and sleep continuity. While the specific theories about sympathetic digestion seem quaint, their systematic attention to nutritional factors provides foundations for contemporary integrative approaches to sleep medicine. Exercise therapy's Victorian extremes evolved into balanced recommendations that validate Colonel Biffington's core insight about the relationship between physical activity and sleep quality. You trace connections between military-style exhaustion protocols and modern recommendations about regular exercise, timing of physical activity, and the role of fatigue in promoting natural sleep onset. Contemporary sleep medicine's emphasis on lifestyle factors reflects Victorian recognition that sedentary modern life contributes to sleep disorders. The hydropathic movement's focus on comprehensive lifestyle intervention anticipates modern wellness approaches to sleep disorders that address multiple factors simultaneously. You observe how Victorian spa treatments evolved into contemporary sleep retreats, wellness centres, and integrative medicine programs that combine environmental manipulation, stress reduction, and lifestyle modification. While modern approaches avoid the extreme discomfort of Victorian water cures, they retain the insight that sleep problems often require comprehensive rather than single-factor interventions. Mental magnetism's emphasis on psychological factors in sleep disorders proves remarkably prescient, though its supernatural theories gave way to evidence-based psychotherapy. You trace clear connections between Victorian magnetists' attention to individual psychology and contemporary cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, mindfulness-based sleep interventions, and stress management approaches. The recognition that sleep disorders often reflect psychological rather than purely physical problems establishes foundations for non-pharmaceutical treatment approaches. Historians still argue whether Victorian sleep medicine represents genuine progress or simply elaborate commercialization of human suffering, but the evidence suggests a complex mixture of both insight and exploitation. The period's wild experimentation produced genuine discoveries alongside obvious quackery, establishing patterns of innovation and marketing that continue to influence how sleep disorders are understood and treated. The economic model of Victorian sleep medicine, transforming a universal human experience into a medical market, establishes precedents for contemporary sleep industry commercialization. You observe how 19th century entrepreneurs recognize that desperate insomniacs represent profitable consumers, creating business models that contemporary sleep technology companies, pharmaceutical manufacturers, and wellness providers continue to refine and expand. The social dimensions of Victorian sleep medicine reveal how cultural attitudes toward rest, productivity, and medical intervention shape treatment approaches across historical periods. You recognize how Victorian anxieties about industrial life's effects on natural rhythms anticipate contemporary concerns about technology's impact on sleep, while their faith in progress and innovation mirrors modern enthusiasm for sleep tracking devices and optimization strategies. Quality control challenges that plagued Victorian sleep medicine persist in contemporary forms, as consumers still struggle to distinguish legitimate treatments from commercial exploitation. The period's lack of regulatory oversight anticipated ongoing challenges in evaluating sleep aids, wellness products, and alternative treatments that make impressive claims without rigorous evidence. International variations in Victorian sleep medicine established patterns of cultural difference in approaching sleep disorders that continue to influence contemporary treatment philosophies. You observe how different national approaches to medicine, wellness, and lifestyle intervention create ongoing variation in how different societies address sleep problems. The measurement and documentation obsessions of Victorian sleep researchers establish precedents for contemporary sleep tracking culture, complete with detailed journals, quantified self-monitoring, and faith that precise measurement will reveal solutions to complex problems. While modern technology provides more sophisticated data collection, the fundamental approach, believing that better information leads to better sleep, reflects Victorian confidence in systematic observation. As you close these historical volumes and prepare to return to your modern world, you realize that Victorian sleep medicine's strange legacy surrounds you in countless ways, from the prescription sleep aids in medicine cabinets to the temperature-controlled bedrooms, white noise machines, and sleep-tracking devices that populate contemporary bedrooms. The Victorians' recognition that modern life disrupts natural sleep patterns while simultaneously creating markets for sleep solutions establishes patterns that continue to shape how you understand and address the timeless challenge of achieving peaceful rest in a restless world. The Victorian sleep cure industry may seem charmingly antiquated from your perspective, but its fundamental insights about the relationship between lifestyle, environment, psychology, and sleep quality provide foundations that modern sleep medicine continues to build upon. Even as specific treatments evolve from laudanum bottles to melatonin tablets, from magnetic chambers to smart mattresses, from mesmerism sessions to cognitive behavioral therapy. Wind down. As the gaslights dim in these Victorian laboratories and the last echoes of mechanical sleep devices fade into historical silence, you find yourself drifting back through time toward your own comfortable bedroom. The desperate voices of 19th century insomniacs grow softer now, their worries about industrial noise and artificial lighting blending into the gentle hum of your modern world's own sleep challenges. You can almost hear the whispered gratitude of those long-ago patients who found some measure of peace, whether through Dr. Morpheus's careful observations, Madame Celestine's soothing attention, or simply the hope that someone understood their sleepless struggles. Their experiments may seem strange to you now, but their fundamental longing for rest connects across the centuries to your own desire for peaceful slumber. The Victorian journey reminds you that every generation discovers sleep anew, finding their own paths through the ancient mystery of consciousness yielding to dreams. Whether through magnetic chambers or smartphone apps, laudanum bottles or meditation techniques, the human quest for perfect rest continues with the same mixture of science, hope, and gentle determination. Let their story settle softly in your mind now, these passionate inventors and desperate patients who believed that the next cure, the next device, the next discovery would finally unlock the secret of effortless sleep. Their legacy lives on in every improved mattress, every sleep study, every moment when modern medicine helps someone find the rest they need. As you close your eyes tonight, you carry with you the strange comfort of knowing that you're part of an ancient tradition of seekers who refuse to accept sleeplessness as inevitable, who continue to believe that somewhere in the intersection of science and care, knowledge and hope, the perfect night's sleep awaits those patient enough to pursue it. Sleep well, knowing that countless others before you have walked this same path toward rest, and that their curious experiments and gentle failures helped light the way to whatever peaceful dreams may come to you tonight.